latest crime stats show an increase in car hijackings across the country. Over 5,000 people reported having their cars taken at gunpoint between October and December. So to discuss this further, we're joined by CEO of Master Drive, Eugene Herbert, joins us now for this conversation. Eugene, good to have you and good morning to you. These stats are quite worrying. Looking at Q3 of the 2021 and 2022 financial year, we're seeing an increase there, 5,455 hijackings, a 13.8% increase from the 4.794 hijackings reported in the same period but the previous year. What do these numbers tell us, Eugene?
It's interesting that you look at it, and I think maybe to put it into perspective, look at the previous quarter where you saw a decrease in hijackings of about 3.5%. Now, I think, and this is based on what research we've done, except that at the last quarter last year, there was more freedom of movement. We had more vehicles on the road because the COVID processes had been relaxed somewhat, so you found people traveling more prolifically, and as a result, businesses are starting to get active again. Now, I don't know that that's the exact reason, but one can only imagine that with that greater freedom of movement, not only did you and I as normal motorists have greater opportunity to travel, but certainly the opportunities available to hijackers would have increased exponentially almost, because now people were free. They could get out and they could drive and they could do all those wonderful things. So it's actually quite sad that at a time when we try to recover in terms of the economy, that we're having a growth. And in fact, I don't know if you noticed that truck hijackings were also an increase about 2.8%. So collectively, it's quite high.
Absolutely. And I'm seeing here that the provinces that show, the most carjacking cases is, KwaZulu-Natal, the Western Cape, as well as Gauteng. And for anyone watching this, including you and I, we're wondering, what is the best way to protect ourselves from a carjacking?
There's no magic pill that we can take, but I think there's some very basic things that we can do. Firstly, if we are conscious of the fact that we are driving and treat that as a task on its own. We see today so many people are involved in other things. When you pull up next to a traffic light, the ubiquitous cell phone next to the ear, and that's notwithstanding the fact that they've got Bluetooth. People are not paying attention to what's going on around them. And of course, you make yourself almost an ideal victim. We must know that at certain times of the day, there's greater risk. For example, at intersections where a great number of hijackings take place. If we're approaching one that we feel uncomfortable with, please, let's just be conscious of what's going on around us.
Right.
Take note of any changes. And if you're approaching an intersection that you feel uncomfortable, you can debate whether it's legal or not. But if it's safe, you don't necessarily have to stop at that robot traffic light, because if you were under threat, I would rather deal with the possible fine or an infringement rather than deal with a hijacker.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is the country we live in, where we have to cross, a red traffic light just to protect yourself if you feel unsafe. So let's say you were not on your phone, Eugene, you were abiding the law, you were not distracted, you were driving, concentrating on what lies ahead, but unfortunately, you still find yourself in that incident where you are a victim of a car hijacking. How do you then remove yourself from that situation?
Okay. Look, obviously, if one thinks about it and if one had training, that would be an ideal circumstance, but not everybody is going to be able to do. There are a couple of things that we should remember. The hijacker doesn't necessarily want you. There's nothing special about you, so they want your car, and many hijackings are to order. So let's be aware of the fact and make up our mind beforehand that should that happen, let's now not go and fight over some material possessions. The vehicle typically will be insured. And the idea then would be to cooperate as much as possible with the hijacker, to let them take the vehicle. You may have a tracking device, who knows, and let the law take its natural course, or the tracking companies follow up. So you don't want to get difficult and deny them the opportunity. And don't be like the typical person that we've read about that says, well, I'll be difficult, I'll throw my keys into the bush.
Right.
If you do something like that, you're really asking for trouble. Now's not the time to say, hey, please, can I keep my precious jewelry, my heirloom? If that's the case, and if we know there's a possibility of us being a victim, well, then rather leave those valuable things somewhere else. Because if that's going to be something that makes you want to take issue with whoever's wanting to take your vehicle, it's really not a good idea. And of course, when we're in the vehicle, there's a way that you can do about it, but indicate submission and typically show the hands so that somebody or the hijacker that's standing outside in the car sees that you're cooperating. If your door is unlocked, they would have probably pulled it open. But there's a process that you can go through to exit the vehicle and back away so that they can get in the vehicle and drive off. Rather take the opportunity of escaping with your life than worry about a material possession that can be covered by insurance in any case.
I appreciate this advice, Eugene, and you speaking to us. And I know for a fact that even though you emphasize that it's the car they want and not necessarily you, you also emphasize it's important to still let your loved ones know where you are. Have an app that gives a location to your loved ones so they can track your movement. If anything happens to you, they can at least know where to start looking for you. So I appreciate you speaking to us this morning. Eugene Herbert, the CEO of Master Drive. Unfortunately, if you are living in Gauteng, in the Western Cape and KZN, you would know these are the provinces, according to the latest stats, that show they have the highest number of carjackings. All right.